At my husband's funeral, his wealthy family laughed as they threw me out like garbage. But when a mysterious billionaire stood up and shocked everyone by calling me his only wife, their laughter died. What happened next changed everything and revealed a secret that destroyed them all. If you love stories about karma and justice, you're going to want to stick around for this one. Hit that like button if you're ready for some serious plot twists. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories. I never thought I'd be telling this story, but after everything that happened, I realized the world needs to hear it. My name is Isabella, and 3 months ago, I stood in the most humiliating moment of my life at my husband's funeral. What I didn't know was that this moment would reveal a truth so shocking that it would change everything, not just for me, but for everyone who had ever looked down on me. It was a cold Tuesday morning when I walked into Hillcrest Memorial Chapel, clutching a single white rose, the only flower I could afford. David had been my husband for 3 beautiful years, and losing him to that car accident had shattered my world completely. But nothing could have prepared me for what his family had planned for me that day. The chapel was filled with at least 200 people, all dressed in expensive black clothing that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. David's family, the Sterlings, had always made it clear that they thought I wasn't good enough for their son. To them, I was just a waitress who had somehow tricked their precious David into marrying me. They never understood that David loved me for who I was, not for what I had. As I walked down the aisle toward the front rows, I felt every eye in that chapel burning into my back. The whispers started immediately. Victoria Sterling, David's older sister, didn't even try to lower her voice when she spoke to her cousin Penelope. "I can't believe she actually showed up here dressed like that," Victoria sneered, her diamond earrings catching the light as she shook her head. "Look at that cheap dress. David must be rolling over in his grave." Her words hit me like physical blows, but I kept walking. I had every right to be there. I was David's wife. When I reached the front row, I moved toward the seat that should have been reserved for me, the widow. But Harrison Sterling, David's father, stepped directly into my path. "Excuse me," he said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "I think there's been a mistake. The front row is reserved for family only." The entire chapel went silent. I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment as Harrison's cold eyes looked me up and down with disgust. "But Mr. Sterling," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady, "I am family. I'm David's wife." Harrison laughed, actually laughed, right there in front of everyone. "Wife? You were married for what? 3 years? We've been David's family his entire life. Please find a seat in the back where you belong." The humiliation was unbearable. I could feel tears stinging my eyes as I walked past row after row of David's family members, all of whom were either smirking or looking at me with pity. Finally, I found an empty seat in the very back row, next to an elderly woman who gave me a kind smile. During the service, Victoria gave a speech about David's life. She talked about his childhood, his achievements, his real family, and all the people who actually mattered to him. She spoke for 15 minutes without mentioning my name once. It was as if our 3 years of marriage had never existed. But the worst was yet to come. After the service, as people began to file out, Harrison stood up and addressed the crowd. "Everyone is invited to the Sterling family home for the reception. We want to celebrate David's life with the people who truly knew and loved him." Then he looked directly at me and added, "This is a private family gathering." I sat there frozen as 200 people filed past me. Some avoided eye contact, while others whispered and pointed. Victoria stopped at my row and leaned down with a satisfied smile. "I hope you understand, Isabella. This is how things work in our family. David may have been confused about a lot of things in his final years, but we know who really belongs and who doesn't." I was completely alone in that chapel, still clutching my single white rose, when something extraordinary happened. A man who had been sitting quietly in the middle section suddenly stood up. He was tall, probably in his late 50s, with distinguished silver hair and wearing what was clearly a very expensive suit. But it wasn't his appearance that made everyone stop and turn. It was the way he commanded the room just by standing. "Excuse me," he said, and his voice carried such authority that even Harrison Sterling stopped walking. "I believe there's been a terrible misunderstanding here." The man walked slowly toward the front of the chapel, and I noticed that several people were whispering his name with what sounded like recognition and fear. He stopped directly in front of the Sterling family and looked at each of them before speaking again. "My name is Theodore Blackstone," he announced, and the effect was immediate. I heard gasps throughout the chapel. People started pulling out their phones, and Harrison's face went completely white. Even I recognized that name. Theodore Blackstone was one of the wealthiest men in the country, worth billions, with his face on magazine covers and business news shows. Theodore's piercing blue eyes found mine across the chapel, and for a moment I saw something that took my breath away. Love, regret, and a pain so deep it matched my own. "Isabella is not David's widow," Theodore continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the now silent chapel. "She is my wife, my only wife, and anyone who disrespects her disrespects me." The chapel erupted in shocked murmurs, but I was frozen in place. What was he talking about? I had never seen this man before in my life. But as he walked toward me, something in his eyes made my heart race with a strange recognition I couldn't explain. Theodore stopped at my row and extended his hand. "Hello, my love. It's been far too long." As our eyes met, everything came flooding back. The memories I had been forced to suppress, the life I had been made to forget, the truth about who I really was. My name wasn't Isabella Martinez, the waitress from downtown. My name was Isabella Blackstone, and this man, this billionaire, was my husband of 5 years. The witness protection program, the memory suppression therapy. David wasn't my husband. He was my protector, an FBI agent assigned to keep me safe from Theodore's dangerous brother Marcus, who had put a hit on me after I witnessed his money laundering operation. David had given up everything to protect me, even agreeing to a fake marriage to maintain our cover. "Theodore," I whispered, and saying his name brought back even more memories. Our wedding day, our home, the way he used to hold me when I had nightmares, the way we had to say goodbye when it became too dangerous for me to stay. Theodore helped me to my feet, and suddenly I was standing face to face with the Sterling family, who looked like they were about to faint. Harrison's mouth was opening and closing like a fish, while Victoria had gone completely pale. "Now," Theodore said, turning back to the family, his voice deadly calm, "let me explain exactly who you've been insulting for the past hour." Theodore's arm was around my waist now, and I could feel strength returning to my body. As more memories flooded back, he began to speak, and with each word, the Sterling family looked more and more terrified. "Isabella is my wife, and she has been under federal protection for the past 3 years because of a threat against her life. David Sterling wasn't her husband. He was Agent David Sterling, one of the finest men I've ever known, who sacrificed his career and ultimately his life to keep my wife safe." The truth was, like a bomb going off in that chapel, David hadn't died in a car accident. He had been killed by Marcus's men when they finally tracked us down. His last act had been to lead them away from me, saving my life at the cost of his own. "Agent Sterling was my childhood best friend," Theodore continued, his voice breaking slightly. "He agreed to this assignment because he knew how much Isabella meant to me. He gave up everything, his real identity, his FBI career, even the possibility of finding love himself, to protect her." Victoria was crying now, but not tears of sadness, tears of pure terror. She had just realized that she had spent the morning insulting and humiliating the wife of a man who could destroy her entire family with a phone call. Harrison finally found his voice. "Mr. Blackstone, we didn't know, we had no idea." "No," Theodore said sharply. "You had no idea because you never bothered to look past your own prejudices. You saw a waitress in a simple dress and decided she wasn't worth your respect. You never considered that there might be more to the story. Then Theodore delivered the blow that would change everything. Harrison, your construction company has built half the commercial properties in this city. What you don't know is that I own the bank that holds your loans. I own the investment firm that manages your family trusts. I own the insurance company that covers your properties. And as of this morning, I own 47% of Sterling Construction itself. The color drained from Harrison's face. What? What are you saying? I'm saying that while you were planning this elaborate humiliation of my wife, I was buying your company out from under you. The papers were signed an hour before this service began. Victoria let out a strangled sob. Please, Mr. Blackstone. We're sorry. We didn't know. We'll do anything to make this right. But Theodore wasn't finished. Victoria, that charity board you're so proud of being on, the Children's Future Foundation. I've been the anonymous donor, funding 80% of their operations for the past 5 years. Your position there is terminated, effective immediately. One by one, Theodore systematically dismantled everything the Sterling family had built their identity around. Their social standing, their wealth, their connections. All of it had been connected to him in ways they never realized. But then came the twist that no one saw coming, not even me. There's one more thing you should know, Theodore said, his voice growing quiet. David didn't just die protecting Isabella. He died protecting his own child. The words hit me like lightning. What? Theodore turned to me with tears in his eyes. Isabella, the memory suppression was more extensive than you knew. You were 3 months pregnant when you went into protection. David wasn't just guarding you. He was guarding our child. My hand flew to my stomach as the memories came rushing back. The morning sickness I had attributed to stress. The doctor's appointments David had taken me to. The sonogram picture he had kept in his wallet. Not as part of our cover story, but because he had fallen in love with the idea of being a father to my child. Where I couldn't finish the sentence. She's safe, Theodore said softly. She's been with my mother for the past 3 years. Her name is Hope, and she has your eyes and my stubborn determination. David chose her name because he said she represented hope for our future together. I collapsed into Theodore's arms, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I had forgotten. I had a daughter. A 3-year-old daughter who had been waiting for me while I lived with false memories of a different life. The Sterling family was completely forgotten now, as Theodore held me while I cried. When I finally looked up, I saw that most of the chapel had emptied out, unable to handle the intensity of what they had witnessed. Harrison approached us hesitantly. Mr. Blackstone, he said, his voice shaking. What can we do? How can we make this right? I expected Theodore to destroy them completely. They certainly deserved it after the way they had treated me. But instead, he looked at me and asked, "What do you want, Isabella? They're your husband's family, and David loved them despite their flaws." I thought about David, the real David, the FBI agent who had given up everything to protect me and my unborn child. He had spoken fondly of his family, even when they disappointed him. He had always believed people could change if given the chance. I want them to learn, I said finally. I want them to understand that wealth and status don't make you better than anyone else. But I also want them to honor David's memory by becoming better people. Theodore smiled at me with the same expression I remembered from our wedding day. That's why I fell in love with you in the first place. Your heart is bigger than your need for revenge. We worked out an arrangement with the Sterling family. They would keep their home and enough money to live comfortably. But their excess wealth would go to establishing the David Sterling Foundation for fallen agents' families. Victoria would work as a volunteer at a soup kitchen for the next 2 years, learning to see value in people, regardless of their circumstances. Harrison would mentor young men from disadvantaged backgrounds, teaching them construction skills. Most importantly, they would publicly apologize for their treatment of me and donate a significant portion of their wealth to help families like the one they thought I represented. Hardworking people just trying to get by. 6 months later, I'm writing this story from the nursery of our restored home, watching Theodore read bedtime stories to Hope. She's an incredible little girl who has her father's business sense and her mother's determination to help others. The David Sterling Foundation has already helped 37 families, and Victoria has become one of our most dedicated volunteers. The Sterling family kept their word. They not only apologized publicly, but became genuine advocates for treating all people with dignity and respect. Harrison recently hired 5 young men from the local community center, and Victoria organized a fundraiser that brought in over $100,000 for homeless families. But the most important thing I learned from this experience is that karma isn't always about revenge. Sometimes it's about giving people the chance to become who they were meant to be all along. David died protecting not just my life, but my daughter's future. The greatest way I can honor his sacrifice is by choosing love over hatred and hope over bitterness. The Sterling family will never forget the day they learned that the woman they tried to humiliate was married to one of the most powerful men in the world. But more importantly, they'll never forget the day they learned that every person deserves respect, regardless of what they can offer in return. As for Theodore and me, we're taking our second chance seriously. We've both learned that wealth and power mean nothing without someone to share them with, and that the greatest treasure we have isn't money. It's our family, our love, and our commitment to making the world a little bit better for everyone we meet.